I'd like to thank Torah Anytime for accepting to put this series on their website. This lectures, this series can be found on TorahAnytime.com and also on Malachi26.com. It's a YouTube channel. As being a rabbi for the past 5-6 years, I see that it's harder and harder to get married. I was just at a Shabbaton talking to a few guys not too long ago. The guys were venting about how hard it is in LA. It's all over really, but in LA especially to get married. The standards, crazy standards and the expectations that some girls have, and you hear from the girls and also the crazy expectations guys have. And this is besides the laundry list of qualities that people are looking for. What are you looking for? I'm looking for a girl who's funny, but not too funny. Girl who's bright, but not too bright, not too smart. I don't want her to be smarter than me. What kind of guy looking for? He has to be strong, but not too strong, not too opinionated, not too strong-minded. And the laundry list goes on and on and on about the qualities that they're looking for. And unfortunately, people, instead of looking for their predestined soulmates, they're looking for what they think and what they believe they expect to find, and what they believe is the right one, instead of looking what God chose for them, which is not necessarily in the laundry list of what you have, the expectations you have. But I'm not saying a person should not have a certain, certain qualities they're looking for. Of course, we're going to discuss. But I think it's overdone, and the long laundry list of qualities is a little bit too much. In this 5-part series, I'm going to touch upon several points that, in my opinion and in my experience as a rabbi for 5-6 years, I think are crucial for a happy marriage. And hopefully we'll get a better idea as to what we should be looking for when we're dating. So everyone can gain from this, both whether you're married or single, you could gain from this, from these points. I distinctly remember a few years ago I was traveling. I was coming to LA without my wife and kids. It was a real vacation. And I was on the plane. Planes are always generally chill time. But you also have to pray before you get on a flight. Why? I've had a lot of experiences on planes which were not the best experiences. You're stuck for 6 hours next to who knows who or what. And we'll leave those stories for a different time. But after all the prayers, you come sit down. I see a guy come down the aisle. Baruch Hashem, he comes next to me. He says, okay, this is my seat. I move my stuff. I'm in the middle seat. I always try to get the aisle. This time, Hashgacha had it. God did not want me to have an aisle seat. I was stuck in the middle. Guy sits down, a man in his 40s, maybe early 50s, and he sees that I have a kippah on. So one of the first things he says, first he says, hi, I try to be nice, make a kiddush Hashem, whenever you're on a plane, anywhere you go. And he says, oh, hi, how are you? What's your name? What do you do? I said, I'm a rabbi. So he said something which was a bit surprising to me. And he says, oh, you're a rabbi. Oh, so you don't get married, right? I said, excuse me? He's like, yeah, just like the priests, they don't get married. So too, the rabbis, same thing. You guys are on a higher level of holiness. And you have to separate yourself from marriage. So then I had to spend the next 20 minutes trying to explain to him what our view on marriage is. The view on marriage is very clear in the Torah. Torah writes that God took Adam v'anichihu began Eden, and he placed him in the Garden of Eden, la'ovda l'shamra, to work it. And then after commanding him not to eat from the Eitz Hadat, from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, there's the famous pasuk, the famous verse which we've all seen, all heard, Vayomer Hashem Elokim lo tov heyot Adam levado. It's not good for a person to be alone. The Torah defines the state of being single as lo tov. It is not good. And this is not a human being saying it's not good and complaining. This is God telling you that the state of being single is lo tov, it's not good. Ez lo ezer kenegdo, I will make him a helpmate. A helpmate. Now, what does this lo tov mean? That it's not good to be single? Says the Midrash, it's brought down in the Midrash Rabbi, and also it's brought down in the Gemara, in Yevamot, in two different places in our oral law. It's stated, lo tov, Tani Rav Yaakov, kol she'ein lo isha, whoever is not married, especially a man who's without a woman, but it goes the other way also. He's living below tova, without any good, below ezer, without a helpmate, without simcha, without true joy, without bracha, without kapara. The list goes on and on. Without any blessing, without any forgiveness, without any peace, shalom, real true peace, and without a true chaim, a true life, a good life. And this is what Torah means, lo tov. And all the commentators discuss this concept of being lonely, that a person cannot reach his potential, impossible to fulfill what their goal and mission in life is without the state of marriage. So what do we believe about marriage? Marriage is the ultimate holiness. Marriage is the state of completion. And until a person is married, they're totally lacking. Now, I also remember, by the way, there was when I was in Plainview, outside of my house, and nearby a couple houses away, there was this guy. Every Friday afternoon, I made it my business to try to play with my kids. The house across the street was a doctor I was very friendly with, close, that came to the shul. So we used their basket. They had a basketball court right in front of the house. And I would go with the kids every Friday afternoon, try to play with them for an hour and a half. It's so important to spend time, quality time, sports with the kids. Every Friday afternoon, this guy in his 60s, he'd be sitting on his stairs and just watching us for the hour that we were out there. So one day, when I was going to synagogue, I was going to shul, I saw him sitting there. I made it my business to go over. I says, "Hi, what's your name?" And he told me his name, and got into a little conversation. And he said, "I'm really jealous of you." I said, "What are you jealous about?" He said, "When I was younger, you could tell that this guy was a good-looking guy when he was younger. He was in the 60s, but even in the 60s, he was a good-looking guy. He said, when I was younger, I used to party all the time. I went from one club to another club, hanging out with one girl to another girl. And the concept of marriage, I don't want to be locked down. I never got married. The biggest regret I have in life is the fact that I never got married. It was fun and games then, but now it's complete life of emptiness. I see you playing with your kids, and you're amazing. You spend so much time with your kids, and he starts telling me, that neighbor, the Indian neighbor over there, he's so nasty to his kids, he's horrible. Tell me every neighbor their issues and problems. But this was like, it hit me, struck me, as like, a lot of these people, they enjoy life when they're younger, but after that, it's a life of emptiness. At some point, it'll catch up on you. The Gemara writes something very interesting. The Gemara says, again, another famous Gemara you may have heard of, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Arba'im Yom Kodem Yitzirat Havlad, 40 days before a child is born, Bat Kol Yotzet V'omeret, a heavenly voice goes out, and he says, Bat Ploni LePloni. Says the daughter of so-and-so is going to marry so-and-so. And the Gemara is very clear that it's predestined that who you're going to marry even way before you're born. That means your soulmate is out there. And your mission in life is to be able to find your soulmate and find out who exactly that soulmate is. And the question that arises, I have to thank Rabbi Shefir, Rabbi Shefir, for some of these facts and statistics I got from him. He's a friend of mine, I'm in touch with him. And the question that could be asked is as follows. If you look in America in 1901, the divorce rates were 6%. The divorce rates in 1901, early 1900s in America, United States of America, were 6%. Today, you fast forward about 100 years, divorce rates are around 50 to 60%. And even some studies show they're close to 67, 68%. And you think about this, it's mind-boggling. How could it be that in such a short amount of time that so many people are just getting divorced? Marriages are rocky, they're not working out. And how many of them are together, they stay married, but they're unhappy in their marriages? And they're just staying married because of what people would say and what the effects it's going to have on the kids, which is a whole another mistake, because the effects are much worse when they're living and fighting and arguing. But here's the question, what happened? How could it be that if God says your soulmate is predestined, the percentages of divorces go from 6% to 50 to 60, maybe 70%. In LA, it's a bit higher than other places, which is staggering. What happened? God intends for everybody to have a happy marriage. So what exactly happened in the short amount of time that there's so many issues and so many divorces? I do feel that most of the divorces that take place, most of the get documents, the divorce documents should not be written. Although there are some people that should get divorced, and for whatever reason God ordained that these couples should not be together and they should go through the tsar, the pain of getting divorced, most of them should not be. Most of the divorces should not be taking place. At some point, for a lot of people in the marriage, they think about life and they think to themselves that they made the biggest mistake in their life. What did I do? What was I thinking to marry this woman? What was I thinking to marry this man? And people don't realize that every marriage has issues. I don't care who it is that is married. Even the biggest rabbi has his challenges and his struggles and things that he has to adjust to and to work on. Back in the days, divorce was not an option. If you asked your grandparents or great-grandparents exactly, where they were, whether it's Iran or Morocco, wherever they were, the concept of divorce was unheard of, and very few people were getting divorced. So there were social pressures, and times have changed. We live in a generation where it's like one-time use. Everything is one-time use. You have your paper plates, your paper cups. You have your leased cars. After 2 years, you get tired of it. You get rid of it. Everything is short-term usage, and when you get tired of it, you get rid of it, and that has an effect on us. Similarly, the ladies also is much more financial independence for the woman. Many reasons given why the divorce rates were much easier to get divorced these days. However, it's a big mistake what people think in their marriages that, I married the wrong person, because issues are everywhere. I distinctly remember that on few different occasions, one time a guy came over to me. He was having issues with his wife, and his main problem was that after being married for 14 years, my wife is high maintenance. All of a sudden now, after 14 years, what comes up, what happened the past 14 years? After a couple kids and 14 years, my wife is high maintenance. Rabbi, I can't live with her anymore. I think we should get divorced. Divorce, calm down, relax. Where are you going? Divorce? It's something you have to work on. You have to talk, communication. Another lady, my husband is this, my husband's messy, my husband is not caring. This lady was married for about 8-9 years. And Rabbi, I think we're headed towards a divorce. Slow down, She's having a little minor issues. The things could be worked out. It's became like a thing. Like, what's the big deal? You get divorced if it's problematic, if it's difficult. The first gut reaction is not that something I have to work on. I have to change. I have to adjust. I have to mold. I get rid of it. I have to get divorced. And I think it's very important in any marriage lecture or dating series to discuss the concept of the male and the female trying to understand each other. It's unbelievable how vastly different. I did not realize this, although I did try to study a lot about this before I was married. But once you get married, you see, wow, it really is a different world. How women think and how men think are completely different tracks. There was a famous bestseller book published in America many years ago, and it sold close to 1 million copies. And the title was What Men Know About Women. What Men Know About Women. And the cute part was that you open this, the first page, it's blank. Flip to the second page, blank. Next page, blank. But 200 pages, it was blank. It was a very cute present that a lot of people would buy. What Men Know About Women, absolutely nothing. It's a blank book. But there's a lot of truth to it. And the gender differences is very important for people, and not to be shocked when they get married, just to know how to relate to their wife, to their spouse. It's so crucial to spend time to study it and analyze it. I like to give the following example. Anyone here going for pre-med? No? Pre-med, anyone? Kind of? You ask your typical person who's going trying to become a doctor, or even not a doctor, lawyer, accountant, how many hours do you spend in college to get your degree, to get your bachelor's and to get your master's? How many hours would you say? Trying to get the degrees, studying, in class, out of class, what would you say?
One too many.
5 hours. 5? What?
No, your entire career. The 4 years that it takes you to get a bachelor's, and then another 2 years to get your master's, and then another 4 years in residency and medical school, the whole deal. Typical doctor has to be in school for 10, 12 years, no? If they want to become a specialist, even more than that. You're talking about thousands and thousands of hours that are spent on your profession, on becoming a doctor. Now, I'd like to go to your typical surgeon and tell him, sir, why are you wasting so many hours to become a surgeon? Why don't you just chuck school, chuck medical school, chuck everything, and go watch all the episodes of ER, is that show still around? And you'll learn how to do surgery. Why are you wasting your time? So what would you tell me? The obvious answer is it's ridiculous, because in order to go into surgery, something significant, you have to put in the time, and you have to study, and you have to research, and you have to learn about it. You can't just jump in with very little experience. And if I asked you a question, if God came to you, and God said you have two options. You could either have a great marriage and a horrible job, or a great job and a horrible marriage. Which one would you choose? You can't go out of either one. You're stuck for life. A great marriage and a disastrous job, or a wonderful job where you're happy with your co-workers and your boss, and a horrible marriage. You're not happy with your husband, you're not happy with your wife. Which one would you choose?
First one.
Which one is the first one? You get me nervous.
Having great marriage and horrible.
So good. There was a hesitation. I don't hear anything from this side. Right? So I hope that you would choose that, yeah, of course, a happy marriage. Because everyone knows that the entire happiness in life is dependent on their spouse. There's no question about it. After me being married close to 11 years, telling you everything is dependent on your wife, everything is dependent on your husband. So now, what you're telling me is that for your degree and your job, which is not nearly as important to you as your spouse or who you married, you're spending thousands and thousands of hours to prepare for it. And yet for marriage, which is much more important to you, how much time does the average person spend preparing for marriage?
Not that much.
Not much. They come to a few lectures, hopefully they'll come to Rabbi Vosoghi's 5-part series, and I hope that you have all the tools and the necessary ingredients for a happy marriage. People have to spend time to research and understand marriage and understand what other gender is about. And there's a lot of books written about it, and there's a lot of good material, but time has to be spent to focus on having a happy marriage, and it doesn't end after you get married. And the work and the studying, and I constantly, my wife asked me about these lectures. I said, how many people does it affect? I think the greatest effect, I don't know if it affects anyone, the greatest effect it has on myself. Any topic I speak about, the fact that I have to go through, that I have to prepare for the speech, and it reinforces these ideas into my head that this is real important, and you got to work on it, and it really helps. You know, this past couple of days, my wife's like, yeah, you've been much nicer to me. Yeah, I'm working on it, working on marriage. So, I'll give you another example. Picture a 16-year-old. It's his 16th birthday, and his uncle is coming to visit him from New York, coming to LA. It's a very wealthy, rich uncle, and his uncle comes for his 16th birthday in front of his house. He sees, his uncle says, "Come out, I have a surprise for you." He comes outside and he sees a brand new Mercedes. He says, "What's this?" He says, "Listen, this is your birthday present, surprise." He says, "What? I don't even have my license, I don't have I have nothing, I can't drive, I don't have my permit." He says, "Don't worry about it, I'm sure you played a lot of arcade games. You go to these arcade joints and they have these virtual games. Get on, you know. What's the big deal?" So now, why is that so foolish? The reason why it's so foolish is that a person needs to learn how to drive the car. You need to learn how to accelerate, how to brake, how to steer the wheel. If you don't, you'll get into an accident. Same thing, I think, applies to marriage. If a person doesn't know when to press the gas, when to press the brake, when to accelerate, when to steer the wheel, you run into issues. And a lot of preparation has to be made for a happy marriage. Now, I want to discuss one area tonight, and the next 4 lectures, each lecture stands on its own. Even if your friends missed one, you could tell them to come for the rest. It's not connected. The individual lectures. This one I want to focus a little bit about this concept of love, what it means, and for a lot of people make a mistake on the definition of love. We find one of the greatest relationships in our Torah literature is the relationship of Avram and Sarah. When the 3 angels, the 3 malachim, they came to visit Avram, and Avram was sitting there in pain. Avram sees these 3 Arabs and he runs after them. "Come, please, come inside," takes care of them. And one of the first questions that comes out of their mouth is, what did they say? Vayomru elav ayesar ishtecha. Where's your wife? Vayomer hina ba'ohel. He says she's in the tent. Now, if you ask my opinion, if I had strangers come to my house, 3 Arabs, and the first question that comes out of their mouth is, "Where's your wife?" I would either knock him out, punch him in the face, or I would tell my wife, "Let's get out of here from the back door." Where's your wife? It seems very inappropriate of a question at any time, especially one of the first things to come out of their mouth. Where is your wife? What do you need to know where my wife is? What do I have to do with my wife? And Avram responds, "Is that not a big deal? Oh, she's in the tent. She's in the other room." What were they doing? So if you look at Rashi quotes the Gemara writes that Malachei Sharet, these were angels, and they knew exactly where Sarah was. What's the reason they asked this question? Ela lahodia shetznu haita. It was to notify Avram that, look, Sarah is a tzanua. Sarah is very modest. Kedei lechabava el baila. In order to endear her to her husband, to make her more dear to Avram Avinu. Now, can someone open the door? There are a few people. Now, this idea to make her more dear to her husband is, we've heard this probably before, by my Rosh Yeshiva Zatzal. My Rosh Yeshiva passed away about 8 years ago. He asked a very blatant question on this Gemara, to make her more dear to her husband. If you think about who we're discussing over here, you should be bothered by a question. Avram and Sarah were the most selfless people you could find in the history of mankind. Which pillar did Avram represent? The pillar of Chesed. He was known as the man of kindness. Everything was about other people. The poison to any marriage is selfishness. People that are in it for themselves, they're selfish. Avram and Sarah were living their lives completely for the sake of the other person. They had their tent set up, all the travelers would come in, the wayfarers come, eat something, drink something. If Avram was such a Baal Chesed, so outer-centered for other people, for Arabs, you would assume that for his wife, how much more so he cared about his wife, and everything that he did was for his wife. They had the best loving relationship you could possibly imagine. The best marriage you could possibly think of. What does it mean over here to make her more dear to her husband? Is it necessary for Avram, for Sarah to be made more dear to Avram Avinu? They don't need that. These are angels, and they know what's going on. They know they had a wonderful relationship. They know that they're dealing with the pillar of chesed, the pillar of kindness. So what exactly was their intention? Furthermore, you don't think Avram knew that Sarah was in the tent, it was in the other room? What exactly were they pointing out to him? Avram, where's your wife? Oh, she's in the other room. You know that. You know the fact. So what's the point? Oh, to make her more dear. Look how modest she is. He knew she was modest. He had lived with her for the past 60, 70 years. They're already at the age of 99 and 90. Avram was 99 years old. And that in itself is an amazing idea. Avram is 99, she's 90, they're already old grandparents. At least they're supposed to be grandparents, they don't have any children yet. Already older. Even back then, 99 years of age was already old. You're telling me that these people who've been married for so many decades, and the people who are so selfless, and they have the best marriage you can imagine, why did they point out to Avram, why did they ask him, where's your wife? So Avram thinks about it, to realize that his wife is tsanua, to realize that his wife, to make her more dear in his eyes. Said my Rosh Yeshiva, L'chora, they already had a wonderful marriage, there's nothing to add to this marriage. What was the point to ask this inappropriate question, to get Avram to think of something which he already knew? They didn't point to anything amazing about her. He knew she was in the tent, and she knew she was a tsanua. What were they doing by asking her this question? This was the question my Rosh Yeshiva asked. Now, to answer this question, I'd like to digress to a midrash. There's a midrash that writes that one time a Roman noblewoman came to Rav Yossi ben Chalafta, and she had a question. She asked Rav Yossi ben Chalafta, in how many days did God create the world? Rav Yossi ben Chalafta says he created the world in 6 days. So she says, so what has he been doing since the beginning of time till now? He's just sitting there and, entertainment with these little people running around and having all sorts of, issues and problems. This is a form of entertainment. Rav Yossi ben Chalafta answers, Hashem, God is mizavik zivugim. He makes matches. He's involved since the beginning of Sheshet Yimei Breshit, from the beginning of time, in making shidduchim, making matches. This is what it's involved in. So she starts smiling and mocking. Says, are you kidding me? This is what your God is involved in? What's the big deal about making matches? Anybody can make matches. He says it's not so easy. And he quotes the Gemara. The Gemara writes that making a shidduch is kashik kriyat yamsuf, is as hard as splitting the yamsuf, splitting the sea of reeds, splitting the ocean. And she says, what's the big deal? So she goes ahead and says, give me some time. She goes to her slaves. She had many slaves and many girl slaves. She says, okay, you to you, you to you. And she matches them up. It didn't take less than a few weeks. She comes running to Rav Yossi ben Chalafta and says, Elokechem emet. Your God is the true God, and your Torah is the true Torah. So what happened? He says, I set them up, and then a few days later, this girl came complaining about him. He says he has this issue, he's messy. This other girl said that his mouth smells. This guy's saying that, she has this issue, she has this problem, she's always late. Problems, and they couldn't be together. And I think there's a very important lesson to learn from this midrash, from this Torah Shebaal Peh, this oral law, and that is the following: that if a person, opens a business, you should hire the best workers, you should hire the best talent. However, one thing you shouldn't do. The one thing you shouldn't do is to bring in a partner, especially if it's a family member. Because generally, partners end up breaking up and usually ends up being messy. Partnerships don't last too long. And you're talking about people who have the same goals, but something along the lines, they get into problems, arguments, issues, they have different ways and thoughts about going about something. It might take 5 years, maybe 10 years, maybe 15, maybe 20. Usually partnerships end in messy breakups, especially if it's a family member. Never work, in my opinion, with a family member. It could get really messy. Now, you talk about marriage. Marriage is not just coming to work 9 to 5, and you're not talking about people who have the same goals and aspirations in life. Marriage encompasses every area of life, from the most mundane activities such as your bank accounts and who's in charge and what you put in, what you take out, to the most most private. Everything is the husband and wife and shared together from beginning to end. And if you really think about marriage, marriages should not last. The divorce rate should be higher than 60 and 70%. It should be 95, 96%. Because men and women are so different, as we'll go on to show. The consideration that men and women are so vastly different, how is marriage supposed to last? However, we know that God wants marriage to last. I'll point out one more study. There was a study done that they took a bunch of young boys and girls from a young age, when they were 3 years old. They went to public schools and they asked a group of 500 3-year-olds, how many of you have a best friend that's a girl? And they went to the girls. How many of you have a best friend that's a boy? The numbers were 50-50. At the age of 3, 50% of boys had girls as their best friend, and 50% of girls had boys as their best friend. They followed through, and with the same crowd, at the age of 5. All of a sudden, the same question, the numbers were knocked down to 20%. 20% of boys said my best friend is a girl, and 20% of girls said my best friend is a boy. They followed with the group again 2 years later, and it was knocked down to 0%. At the age of 7, there was not one single boy who had a girl as a best friend, and not one single girl who had a boy as a best friend. What's the reason? It's very clear. Boys and girls like to be involved in completely different activities. Girls like to schmooze, and they like to discuss how their night went and their day went, and they like to hug each other and kiss each other. I don't know, whatever girls do. Whatever you guys do. Guys like to wrestle, punch each other, kill each other, sports, beat each other up. That's what guys do. Vastly different activities than girls. And these differences don't decrease as people age, they only increase. And the Gemara writes, Nashim am bifnei atzma. It says that women are a completely different species. Not in a bad way, it's just saying compared to men, women are thinking completely different in a different world. Compared to women, men are thinking in a completely different channel. Vastly different. So, here's the observation. If you have two people with completely different backgrounds, with different life settings, with different goals and different aspirations, with different mentalities, everything is so vastly different. How is it possible for a relationship to last? If anything, the relationship should not last. And the divorce rates should be higher than 60%. However, God wants the relationship to last. God loves marriage, and marriage is the ideal state for a person, as we said in the beginning of this lecture. So He created a few tools to be able to bond the man and the woman, the girl and the boy together. One of them is a tool called infatuation. A lot of people think that this is, falling in love. Love at first sight. Be struck by the angel, the Cupid, the angel of love. Fall in love. You see a girl, wow, you fall in love with her after one date, or a guy, he's so cute, he's so amazing. Fall in love. This is not love. This is what we call infatuation. Infatuation is a chemical imbalance in the brain, and people who are infatuated are on a completely different planet. Their brains are totally shut off, and scientists say that there are real changes going on in the brain. The dopamine levels skyrocket, the adrenaline is pumping, the serotonin levels are higher, and the changes are very, very similar to cocaine. The same way someone takes cocaine, they're on a high. Someone who's infatuated is on a high. And the normal, sharp, critical eye that is able to pick on, issues and problems is completely dulled, and it doesn't see anything wrong. She's amazing. She's perfect. He's Prince Charming, the most amazing guy in the world. You have to see him. I could attest to this. It happened to me. In my many years of going out, 2-3 years of going out, I dated about 25, 26 girls. One of the girls, I have to be careful what I say, my wife might see this. One of the girls was off the charts. She was so good looking, it was abnormal. Now, I know going into it that it was a little bit problematic. Why? Because in order for someone to stay in learning, stay in yeshiva, you have to have someone to support you. The wife has to work, and the husband gets his little dinky paycheck from the kollel, and together you try to make it. That's the lifestyle. I knew going into it that she didn't have such a good parnasa. Someone said, you go one time, see, maybe you could work something out. I went out with her one time, and I was so into the date. I only realized this after. And by the end of the first date, I felt myself dizzy driving back when I was driving home, and my mouth was so dry. I stopped by a gas station to get a drink. I realized I was completely dehydrated because I was so talkative and so into the date that I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? And after 2 days, thank God, it didn't work out for whatever technical reasons, thank God. But I realized one important lesson. What's the lesson I learned? I was so into her, and I was so blinded emotionally into it with her looks and everything, that all the issues I had answers for. The Parnasa problem, what are you going to do? How are you going to make it? She doesn't have such a good job. Parnasa, money's in God's hand. Come on, what do you say? All comes from Shemayim. Hashem's going to take care. What's the matter with you? The answer is, this is what you call the infatuation, where a person's brain is completely shut off. You're thinking with your heart, with your emotions. And in this religion, we try to think with our brains as much as possible. We don't want to think with our hearts. If you make your decisions with your heart, you end up making a lot of mistakes. The decision has to be done with the brain, and what the emotions do, that they blind the person. That's what you call infatuation. God created this tool, infatuation, in order to start off a marriage, start off a relationship. Infatuation very, very quickly ends. The purpose was to start the relationship on the right foot, with, on a high, so to say. But to turn that high into real love, into a real relationship where they're there for each other, a real appreciation. And every boy and every girl, when they're engaged, or even before they're engaged, they think that this magic is going to last forever. This magic of being in this high, this drug, is going to last forever. And it unfortunately doesn't. It fades away very quickly. And before they know it, the reality sets in, and the problems begin. Because they're expecting the love to answer everything. Love is the cure of all problems and all the issues.
Is there anybody here that knows about how to lock up the show?
You want to know, in my opinion, the single most vital criteria in a marriage? You might think it's obvious, it's love. Love is the glue of the marriage, and everybody has flaws, everybody has qualities that they need to work on. But if there's a real bond, there's a real appreciation for each other, there's real sense of respect for one another, the marriage will continue. There was a study done by one of the psychologists, John Gottman, and he studied and analyzed many marriages. He brought hundreds and hundreds of couples that were newly married, and he did a whole study with them. He measured their pulse rates and different physiological responses during this interview. He had a 90% accuracy of who would stay married and who would end up getting a divorce. And he said the single most important criteria, more than anything else, is if these people, the husband and the wife, have a real appreciation for each other. Do they really have a sense of bond, a real sense of love? I'm going to spend the entire next lecture of what the Torah's definition of love is. Love is not at first sight. Love is not falling in love, because you could fall into something, easily fall out of it. That's not considered love. Love is something that comes with a lot of time, and the next lecture is very interesting in what exactly Torah's perspective of what love is. But a lot of people have this issue where they're living with each other, but there's no real love. There's no real appreciation and real respect for each other. What happens in a relationship where there is no real love? I'll give you two examples, which to me were mind-boggling. My wife had a co-worker in New York, and she worked in a Booth Hospital, and this co-worker was divorced. My wife over the years got friendly with her, and one time they were talking, and my wife had the guts to ask her, what happened? How come you got a divorce? So she said, well, my husband was in the Twin Towers when it was hit, and he was running down from the 50th floor. His life was on the line. As he was running down the stairs, he thought to himself that if I survive from here, I have to make a real life change. What was his life change? His New Year's resolution? To leave his wife and go marry his secretary. This was his new, can you imagine? You're talking about people living together, that there's no bond, there's no relationship, there's no real love. And you know, if it doesn't work for me, until now it worked, now I need to change. So I'll easily just drop her, just like that. I know a family, I know many couples like that, that people could be living in the same house. Hopefully, you know, when you get married, you'll see, as time goes on, I have to catch myself sometimes. You get so busy in life, busy with classes, busy with teaching, busy as a rabbi. I'm getting texts, and from New York, so many people are still calling me since I was the rabbi, and all the younger guys, they don't have, you know, someone, a go-to guy. So you get busy, and you somehow along the lines, along the way, between the busyness of being a rabbi and teaching and everything, you forget about your wife. On top of everything, the kids. The kids are always there. They're up till, you know, 8, 8:30, 9. If you live a real Persian family, they keep up their kids, they let them stay up till 11, 12, whatever they let them stay up, right? And you don't have time. And by the time it comes 9, 9:30, you know, in the beginning it's easier. You're able to go out and spend time, but after a while it gets so difficult. And it's so crucial for husband and wife. At some point they could find themselves that they're living under the same roof, but they have nothing to do with each other. It's so, I didn't believe it. When I was first married, I'm like, what are people talking about? Now you see how easy it is for a person to fall into that trap. It's so crucial for a husband and wife to spend quality time with each other. At least once a week, to go out, if not more. If not more. There was a psychologist in my yeshiva I owe a lot of debt of gratitude to. He really helped me with a lot of things with my kids and everything. Harvard graduate, and he took some time off to come to yeshiva. He never left. He's been there for the past 30, 40 years. Any questions I had with my kids, I called him, I talked to him. Even now I call him, and he told us, you know, the importance of spending time with your spouse. You must at least once a week go out with each other, and if you can, manage it. But it's so crucial, because otherwise, you know, you could run into issues. To keep that bond and that glue and that love in the marriage. And you want to know what the answer my Rosh Yeshiva said? You want to know the answer what the Malachim, the angels, were doing with Avram? Avram already had such a wonderful relationship. What does it mean to increase their love? To make her more dear in his eyes. Whatever level they were holding on, the 99.99% of love that they had, apparently there's always new levels that a person could reach in their attachment, in their love for their spouse. The Torah's viewpoint in a marriage and Shalom Bayit being such a holy relationship, that the Torah wants there to always be work in increasing that love and increasing that bond. And this is what the Malachim are doing. You want to know Avram knew? You're right, Avram knew. Avram knew that she was in the tent. But the fact that they pointed it out brought it back to his mind a little bit. And on some level, some infinitesimal level, it increased that love. It increased that endearment. Look, my wife is such a tzanua. She's so modest. It increased that love. It went from 99.99 to 99.9999. Right? And this is the whole purpose of asking this question, an appropriate question, to increase that love. And even at the age of 99, God says, yeah, does that increase that Shalom Bayit? Most people, when they get older, it's already, you know, what Shalom Bayit, come on, that was when I was younger. That was when I was 30, 40, 50. We're over the hill already. What's Shalom Bayit? Yeah, even at the age of 99, you're expected to work on this. And love requires a lot of work. Infatuation is very easy. It's very easy for a person to fall in love, and it's very easy for a person to fall out of love. Real love takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of work, and it's a tremendous amount of time that's spent together, going out, and you know, my Rosh Yeshiva back, I remember when his wife passed away. I'll conclude with this. My Rosh Yeshiva, he gave a eulogy for his wife. It was one of the most amazing eulogies I've ever heard, touching eulogies. He got up and he was crying and crying away. And he kept on saying, I was maspid my father, I eulogized my father, I was maspid my mother, I eulogized my mother, I can't be maspid my wife. I can't. It's like being maspid myself. And then he went on, kept on repeating. We did everything together, crying away. We did everything together. And anyone who knew their relationship knew that they're always like one unit. There's nothing separating them. Just that connection, that bond, the love that they shared was something incredible. Talking about a couple who never merited to have any kids, and a couple that were always there for each other. She was always watching out for him, and he was always watching out for her. It was the most amazing relationship that I've ever seen. And that summed up his whole life. We did everything together. There's nothing we didn't do without each other. So, with that being said, this was the introduction. I'm going on to the other. The next 4 parts, I'm going to talk about some different traits that people should stay away from. I'm going to talk about different aspects of the dating process, what you should look for, what you shouldn't look for, and what you should be careful from. And hopefully by the end of the 5 series, you have a much better grasp of who you want and who you should be looking for in a marriage.
Thank you.